The first thing Dr. Leona Blake noticed wasn't the absence of the gourmet meal she had carefully pre-ordered. It was the tone. "We're out of your selection, ma'am. We only have the cold chicken sandwich today." The words were delivered by a flight attendant with a sleek chignon, clipped voice, and a gaze that passed over Leona like she was background decor. No apology, no explanation. Just a tray with a cold, uninspired sandwich and a glass of water filled barely halfway. Then came the smile, thin, mechanical, a polite bandage meant to excuse the wound. Leona didn't respond. She didn't raise an eyebrow, didn't scroll for the email confirmation on her phone. She simply looked at the tray an extra beat longer than most. Silence expanded around her like a cushion. She'd flown this route before, Stratus Air 917, Boston to Abu Dhabi. This wasn't new. She flew international first class dozens of times each year. Her dietary needs were always honored. Halal certified, high protein, low sodium, and paired with herbal tea. She never requested luxury, only what was necessary. And yet, her confirmed and reconfirmed meal had mysteriously disappeared. Meanwhile, in seats 1C, 1D, and 2A, the white men around her dined on Wagyu beef and foie gras, Dom Perignon bubbling in crystal glasses. Becky Larson, the flight attendant, had already moved on before the tray even settled fully on Leona's table. Her heels clipped along the carpet as she sang a syrupy welcome to a silver-haired man. "Mr. Radford, wonderful to have you with us again." Leona kept her gaze down. She didn't touch the sandwich. Instead, she unfolded the napkin and draped it lightly over the plate. A long time ago, she might have asked to speak with a supervisor. Might have said, "I'll wait for what I ordered, thanks." But not now. Now she understood something deeper. When you're the only black woman in a space, sometimes silence is more commanding than protest. This tray wasn't just a meal. It was a message. A familiar one. You don't belong here. Not really. Not despite your name on the boarding pass. Not despite paying full fare. Not even with 10 digits of influence trailing behind your signature. She turned to the window. 37,000 feet above the Atlantic, the sky was a deep, endless blue. Down below, children in rural classrooms flipped through books funded by her foundation. Women graduated from universities built with her grants. She wasn't flying for a meal. But she wasn't flying to be disrespected either. Across the aisle, a man in a tailored gray suit glanced at her tray, then turned away. Not his problem. Just a woman with the wrong sandwich. Leona smiled faintly. A smile that meant nothing to strangers but everything to those who knew her. She rotated her watch and tapped 3 times. No one noticed, not even Becky, still pouring champagne. But in a secure office in New Haven, Connecticut, a notification blinked onto a private screen. GP41. Geneva Protocol initiated. Back on the plane, Leona gently folded the napkin and placed it back on the tray. Her face calm, her body still. She leaned into the leather of seat 1A. Not outraged. Not broken. Just ready. She glanced at the safety card clipped to the seat. Stratus Air 917. Boston to Abu Dhabi. She tucked it away, her thoughts already shifting to the upcoming summit. In less than 12 hours, she would lead negotiations finalizing a $3.2 billion education partnership. This wasn't about speeches or ceremonies. This was the apex of 2 decades building Blake global education into a global force. She wasn't always CEO. 2 decades ago, she was Professor Blake, lecturing at Harvard on education policy. Her early work advocating free, quality primary education in developing countries was met with polite applause and relentless skepticism. Still, she stayed focused on the data, retention rates, graduation statistics, literacy scores. In 2007, she launched her foundation with a single pilot school in Kenya. Then 5 more. Then 20. By 2012, she was flying to Nairobi, Dhaka, and Lima to help governments rewrite curriculums. UNICEF noticed. UNESCO invited her onto panels. The World Bank cited her white paper on community-led schooling. The invitations changed. Not just to speak, but to lead. She balanced data with empathy, grounding policy in human dignity. Under her leadership, her foundation raised $6.4 billion, building over 20,000 schools across 42 countries. Thousands of girls, once barred from school, now studied in well-lit classrooms, believing someone in the world cared. Leona never boasted. She didn't need to. Results spoke. And this deal with the Arab Education Initiative would be transformative. The partnership would fund infrastructure, train teachers, and launch e-learning platforms across the Gulf. Abu Dhabi would be the flagship. Becky reappeared. Leona sat composed, Her navy wool suit pristine, hair pulled into a twist, briefcase at her feet. Becky placed a new glass of champagne on her table. "Ma'am," she said. "No recognition. No, Dr. Blake. No, Miss Blake. Just ma'am." The verbal shrug reserved for people you don't care to know. Leona nodded slightly. She didn't correct her. Early in her career, she learned that demanding respect rarely won it. She preferred action to applause. And Becky's behavior would not go unmarked. The cabin was all soft hum and silverware clinks. In Seat 1C, a banker laughed about his new Gulfstream. In 1D, a former oil magnate toasted his partner. Becky bent practically in reverence to deliver their food. Leona watched. Calmly. She cataloged every nuance, posture, tone, duration. Becky gave others time. To her, a nod and retreat. She hadn't eaten for pleasure in years. Meals were fuel. She didn't need indulgence. She needed equity. 7 minutes later, the Geneva Protocol would ping Charles Whitley, CEO of Stratus Air. The airline could delay systemic reform, but it couldn't ignore its public image. Integrated AI cameras on board captured every service interaction. Within 11 minutes, Becky's dismissiveness would trigger a Geneva Protocol ethics review. Leona tapped her watch again. Her screen lit up. GP41 received. ETA 12 minutes. She closed the tablet and turned to the window, watching clouds drift below. Children would arrive at new schools tomorrow. Leaders in Abu Dhabi would prepare for speeches. And a flight attendant would be learning the cold price of subtle disrespect. She laid her hands on the cloth napkin, her expression poised. She wasn't angry. She was focused. The half-empty water glass and cold sandwich no longer bothered her. They were relics. Symbols. And the system was about to respond. Nearly 600 miles away, at a secure building in New Haven, Aaliyah Chin received the alert. She'd been Leona's executive assistant for years, previously a senior data analyst. Her workstation blinked with a priority alert. GP41. Triggered. Aaliyah reviewed the report. Unfulfilled special meal request. Disparate service. Passenger. Dr. Leona Blake. Seat 1A. She retrieved the camera feed. Becky's condescending glance. The abrupt service. Then she pulled up the contract between Stratus and the Arab Education Initiative. There it was, Stratus, official carrier for the AEI's $3.2 billion program. Aaliyah drafted the email. Subject: Urgent Ethics Review. Flight 917. Per Clause 14B of our agreement, we request a review of service conduct impacting a senior guest. All disbursements are on hold pending investigation. She attached the footage, timestamped and annotated. 3 minutes later, 2 secure lines lit up, one to Stratus CEO Charles Whitley, the other to Global Compliance. Whitley received a flashing alert, GP41 emergency. An email to AEI's undersecretary followed. Red banners updated the dashboard. Pending critical. Back in the air, Becky was adjusting a passenger's pillow when her tablet chirped. The screen blinked. She tapped it, and a video screen opened. Charles Whitley's face appeared. Rebecca Larson, you are hereby terminated. Effective immediately. Step away from all passenger service. She froze. The air around her thinned. Leona remained still, her tray untouched. The AI systems had worked. The silent gears of justice had turned. Daniel, the junior attendant, approached. Dr. Blake, he said, voice soft, placing a new tray before her. Grilled filet, roasted vegetables, panna cotta. A full meal. We sincerely apologize. Leona nodded. She didn't gloat, didn't even smile, but her shoulders eased slightly. Across the aisle, Becky stumbled back to the galley, her face pale. A woman patted her arm. Becky stared ahead, silent. Stratus crew had long operated under unspoken codes. Who gets attention? Who gets delay? Leona had known. She'd felt it. But now? Now it was documented, codified, and punished. As Daniel poured chamomile tea, one executive murmured to another, just business. To them, Becky's fall was a footnote. To Leona, it was a shift. An acknowledgement that systems can correct, that justice can travel silently at 37,000 feet. Leona reflected on past dismissals, being mistaken for an assistant at the UN, asked to wait in a lobby while junior staff were ushered into panels. But each slight built something in her. Not bitterness. Precision. A mastery of systems. Her watch vibrated again. The AEI had officially placed the partnership on hold. All funding paused pending full audit. Geneva buzzed. Investors panicked. Emails circulated. Legal clauses were reviewed, and in Geneva, Whitley addressed his board. We're inviting Dr. Leona Blake to serve as external advisor for service ethics. This isn't a PR move. This is how we survive. Back in the terminal, reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed. Becky was escorted down a side corridor. A quiet HR team waited in interview room 2. Ms. Larson, an investigator, began, opening the footage. Please explain why Dr. Blake's confirmed request was denied. Becky stammered. It was a system error. I didn't realize. The investigator didn't respond. She slid forward a report labeled Pattern Analysis, Disparate Service. Outside, Leona stepped into a waiting Mercedes. Across the city, undersecretaries from AEI gathered in hushed conference. One stood and spoke clearly. Dr. Blake's quiet leadership protected this partnership. We proceed under new terms, integrity enforced. In the car, Leona reviewed the draft for her keynote. She deleted the old title. Typed instead, Integrity First. At the summit, she stepped up to the stage. Ministers and officials stood. She spoke only one sentence. True partnership is not built on hospitality, but on respect. The room held its breath. And then it moved forward. Leona Blake had arrived. Not as a guest, as a force. The sandwich had been cold, but her silence had burned through steel.